In 2000, police entered the house of John Price, and what they found inside was too horrifying to comprehend: a skinned body, a chopped head, and dinner plates set for children. In the middle of it all was Katherine Knight, the first woman in Australia to receive life imprisonment without parole. Welcome to Malika's Case Walls, and today our case is Katherine Knight. Almost every criminal story starts with something in the past, and for Katherine Knight, hers started in a house filled with violence and trauma. Katherine was born on October 24, 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales, Australia. Her mother was Barbara Roughead, who was already married to a man named John Jack Rowan, and the two had 4 sons together. But Katherine's mother, Barbara, started an affair with her husband's co-worker called Ken Knight. And when the people found out about the affair, when the town, like their small conservative town, found out about the affair, the scandal grew so bad that the two had to leave the town. Ken and Barbara moved to a place called Murray, and she did not take her sons with her. The 2 oldest sons stayed with her ex-husband, and the youngest ones moved to Sydney with an aunt. Barbara had 4 more children with Ken, and 2 of those children were a set of twins born in 1995. The twins were girls, and of course one of them was Katherine Knight. A few years later, in 1959, Barbara's ex-husband, Jack Rowan, had died, and the 2 oldest sons that were living with an aunt in Sydney had to move into a new household with Ken. So this meant that Katherine grew in a house that was crowded, unstable, and filled with arguments and conflicts between her parents. Ken Knight was not a good husband, and honestly, nor was the wife, because she literally cheated on her first husband, but whatever. So Ken was an abusive alcoholic. He used to constantly demand sex from Barbara. Like he used to practically force her. You can call it rape. Her mother used to practically dump her trauma on Katherine, and it caused her life to get more tragic. On top of all this situation, Katherine claimed that she was sexually abused by her family members. Not her father, but her relatives, and it went on until she was the age of 11. We can say that she was not close to her siblings or her parents, but she was close to her uncle, Oscar Knight. He was a well-known champion horseman, but when he had committed suicide in 1969, she was devastated. After he had died, Katherine claimed that she used to see his ghost, like his ghost used to come and visit her, and it was a belief that she practically carried for the rest of her life. After his death in the same year, the family moved to Aberdeen. At school, Katherine was a loner. She developed the reputation of being a bully, intimidating and threatening smaller students. She even assaulted a boy with a weapon, and once her own teacher, injured Katherine. But the school had determined that the teacher had acted in self-defense to Katherine's abuse. Katherine's personality was unpredictable. She could be explosive and violent, but she could also switch into being a well-behaved, respectful student. Sometimes she was so respectful, she was so good, she was so nice that she won awards for her good behavior. This contradiction that she had, being both cruel and charming, it became a defining feature of her life. After leaving school, Katherine joined a local abattoir, a slaughterhouse. And for a lot of people like me, gruesome was a horrifying word. Like, how can anyone even look at that? But she thrived there. She quickly became skilled with knives. She leveled up her butchering skills. She was proud of her butchering skills, and eventually she was given her own set of knives. She treated those things like they were precious, like they were babies. She polished them daily, she kept them razor sharp, and she hung them above her own bed. And her family and friends remembered her saying that they would be there just in case she needed them. In 1973, she met David Kellett, who was a co-worker, and he had his own share of traumas. He was a heavy drinker, and his alcoholism was rooted in the two incidents that happened to him when he was working on the railway in Coffs Harbour. The first incident took place when he saw his own best friend die in front of him in a shunting accident. And the second incident happened when he tried to rescue victims from a school bus that had been hit by a train in Campsie. 6 children had died in there, and it haunted him for the rest of his life, even though it was literally not his fault. Because of these tragedies, he lost his railway job and he started working in the same slaughterhouse that Catherine was working in. Over there, he was friends with Catherine's brother, and it caused Catherine and David to become close friends too. By 1974, the two got married, but it was not in traditional fashion. It was her who had insisted on getting married to him. And they did not even marry in a proper way. She had arrived to the wedding or to the church or wherever they get married. She arrived there on a motorcycle with David drunk behind her, and he was barely holding on. In the ceremony, her mother warned David to be careful. Like, she told him he shouldn't trouble her and that he shouldn't cheat on her, otherwise Catherine would definitely not spare him. And she was right. I think that David should have taken that warning serious. He should have ran off that same day, but he didn't. And he basically tested the waters by himself. On their wedding night, after having sex 3 times, David fell asleep. He was exhausted, he was tired, but Catherine, on the other hand, had other plans. She complained that he didn't satisfy her enough, and because of how enraged she was, she tried to strangle him in his sleep. The marriage between Katherine Knight and David Kellett grew chaotic, you can say. Her temper was downright bizarre, unpredictable, and she was always violent. One night, while she was heavily pregnant, she lost her mind because David had come home late from a local darts competition, and he was there because he won. He reached finals over there. She burned all of his clothes and shoes, and she struck him across the back of his head with a frying pan. And the hit was so bad that he collapsed. He later had to be treated for a fractured skull. David, who had been fearing for his life, ran to the neighbor's house, and over there the neighbors called the police. And when the police arrived, they wanted to charge Catherine for assault, but she was manipulative and she switched from being violent to sweet, begging David to forgive her. And unfortunately, David did forgive her. But things didn't get any better. In May 1976, right after she had given birth to their first child, Melissa Ann, David reached his breaking point. He cheated on her, or he ran to another woman. He ran to Queensland, desperate to escape Catherine's abuse. Obviously, Catherine went mad when she found out what David had done. And the very next day, she was spotted walking down the street with the newborn baby in a pram, and she was aggressively swinging it around left and right. And when the neighbors saw her, they described her as insane. She was taken to St. Elmo's Hospital, where the doctor diagnosed her with postnatal depression. And after a few weeks, she was released, but her insanity went more steps ahead. She placed her baby on a railway line, knowing that a train was about to come. Then she grabbed an axe and roamed around in town, running or threatening people that she was going to kill them. Yes, she was threatening people that she was going to kill them. And by sheer chance, a homeless man who was scavenging nearby found the baby on the tracks, and he grabbed the baby just minutes before a train ran through. Catherine was arrested again and she was taken back to St. Elmo's Hospital, but because of being how manipulative she was, she managed to talk her way out again. And just the next day, she was out of the hospital as if nothing had ever happened. Just a few days after being released from the hospital, she struck again, grabbing one of her beloved knives that I mentioned before that was gifted to her, right? She slashed a woman in the face with that, demanding that the woman should drive her all the way to Queensland so that Catherine could track her husband. The woman was obviously terrified and she obeyed first, but later when they reached a service station, the woman escaped. And by the time the police arrived once again, Catherine had gone overboard. She had taken a boy hostage holding a knife over his neck and threatening to kill him. The police had no choice but to improvise, and they took brooms. They attacked her with brooms, and they managed to capture her just before she could hurt the child. After that, she was admitted in Morisset Psychiatric Hospital. There, she confessed her evil planning and how she wanted to kill the mechanic at the service station, the same mechanic who had repaired David's car, allowing him to leave Catherine. She even revealed that she had planned to murder David and his mother once she reached Queensland. When the police told this to David, his reaction stunned everyone. And it even stunned me when I was researching because he decided to go back to Catherine. Like, dude, you're getting the chance. You're getting the chance to run away. You're getting the chance to stay away from her. And you went back after her. Like, I literally do not understand this mindset. But he went back with his mother. He left his new girlfriend and he went back to Aberdeen with his mother to support Catherine. Catherine was released from the hospital on August 9, 1976, into the care of her mother-in-law. She and David then relocated to Ipswich on the west of Brisbane, where she found work at Dinmore Meatwork. Their marriage continued, and on March 6, 1980, Catherine gave birth to another baby daughter, and her name was Natasha Marie. But David and Catherine's relationship was beyond repair at this point. Finally, in 1984, she left David. Thank God. Thank God, at least his life is safe. And then she moved back to her parents' house in another city. And from her parents' house, she moved to her own house. Once she moved back, she joined the same old slaughterhouse that she was working in previously. But she got a serious back injury and she was on a disability pension now. Because of how she wasn't working anymore, the government provided her a public housing residence back in Aberdeen, and that is literally where things get worse. Catherine met 38-year-old minor David Saunders in 1986. A few months later, he moved in with her and her daughters, and he also luckily, sensibly kept his old apartment in Scone. Now, I don't know what was wrong with her, and she used to grow jealous because of what he did when she was never around. So she used to throw him out. She would throw him out, and I think it happened often. And it resulted in him moving back to his apartment, and she would shamelessly follow him and beg him to return. Like, what is this mindset? Now this woman went completely overboard. She legit cut David's 2-month-old dog's throat in front of him. And she said that is an example of what is going to happen if you cheat on me. He didn't even cheat on her, and this is what she's doing. Like, what the hell? And then to make matters worse, she had the audacity to knock him out with a frying pan again. She legit has some obsession with frying pans, I think. In June 1988, she gave birth to a third daughter named Sarah. And to decorate the house, she used so many weird things. She used animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes, and pitchforks. And she didn't even leave any space uncovered. Even the ceiling was decorated. Catherine and David Saunders had an argument which resulted in her throwing an iron in his face. And then she stabbed him in the abdomen with a pair of scissors. After the assault, he moved back to Scone, but then he came back to her house and he found that she had cut up all his clothes. It resulted in him taking a long service leave and going into hiding. And Catherine tried to find him, but she failed because no one admitted to knowing his whereabouts. Several months later, when David returned to come and check on his daughter, he found out that Catherine had gone to the police and falsely told them that she was afraid of him. And they issued her an apprehended violence order and AVO against her. By 1991, she had already moved on, and this time she was seeing John Chillingworth. He was a co-worker in the same slaughterhouse that she had been working in, and the two got together. By 1992, she gave birth to his son named Eric, but just like all her past relationships, this one never lasted too. And after 3 years, she left him, going to another man who she had been secretly seeing behind John's back, John Price. These two Johns are different, by the way. One was John Chillingworth and one was John Price. John Price is the one she's going to next. Now, one thing I find ironic about her is that how she threatens each partner warning them that they should not cheat on her. And she, on the other hand, is cheating on them. John Price was born on April 4th, 1955, and he was well liked and well known in the community. He was very devoted to his children from his first marriage. His first marriage ended in 1988, and his youngest daughter ended up staying with the mother, but his two older kids lived with him. John knew her violent reputation. Hell, everyone did. But somehow his children liked her, and he was also earning a solid income as a local miner, which resulted in their relationship being good for the first few months, or you can say in the beginning. Apart from their conflicts, the violent conflicts, he thought that he could manage her. He thought that he could handle her, or maybe he could change her or whatever. And in his own words, it was like life was a bunch of roses. But it was not going to stay that way. By 1988, Katherine was rushing John to marry her, but he refused, and she retaliated in a way that destroyed his life. John had been collecting discarded, used items from his work that weren't needed there anymore, and Katherine had videotaped those items and sent it to his boss. Even though the items were worthless, the boss fired John, even though he had worked there for 17 years. And when he came home, he kicked Katherine out of the house. When the town found out about what Katherine had done to John, people started to distance themselves from her. She was distrusted now. But John couldn't stay away forever. He eventually restarted the relationship with Katherine, but this time he did not let her back in his house, and that decision only made the fights more frequent. The fights grew frequent, and Katherine's rage was more violent. It grew so violent that even John's friends gave up on him. Most of them told him to stay away from her, to get away from her, and they even stopped coming to his house. But John didn't listen, and his friends were right, because what she did next was the most brutal crime ever in Australian history. Eventually, at some point, John did let her back in the house, and by February 2000, things had escalated. Like, her violence was worse than before. One night, she stabbed him in the chest during an argument, and that was John's last breaking point. He threw her out of the house after that. On February 28, John stopped at the Scone Magistrates Court on his way to work, and he filed a restraining order against Katherine, hoping that he could protect himself and his children. But even John knew that might not be enough. So that same afternoon at work, he told his co-workers, "If I don't come to work tomorrow, it's because Katherine Knight has killed me." And his friends begged him not to go back home, but he didn't listen. He said that my children are there and I need to get to them safely. When John reached home, he found out that Katherine wasn't there, and she had sent his children to a sleepover at a friend. He was relieved, so he spent the evening at the neighbors before heading back home in the evening, and he went to bed around 11 p.m. Katherine, on the other hand, had been preparing for this day. She had purchased a brand new black lingerie earlier that day, and she had recorded an eerie videotape making cryptic, unsettling comments about her children. She actually hadn't said anything about her children. She had recorded her children, and she had made weird comments in between. It was like she knew that she was going to die or something. It was like she knew whatever she was going to do was going to end her freedom. She knew it was going to change her life. Katherine that night entered John's house, watched TV quietly while he slept, and then she went to take a shower normally as if nothing was wrong. Then she slipped into the bed and she woke him up and the two had sex, and then after that John fell back asleep exhausted. But he did not know what was going to come next. The next day around 6 a.m., a neighbor grew concerned when he noticed that John's car was still parked in the driveway. And his employer also sent a worker to check up on him after he didn't show up for work. They tried to knock on his bedroom window, hoping to wake him up or something, but nope, they found blood under the front door instead, and they were alarmed, obviously, so they had to call the police. When the police arrived, they had to force their way inside the house through the back door, and what they found inside was horrifying. I don't even know. It was devastating. I don't even know how to describe it. It was devastating, sad, because John did not deserve what happened to him. John Price was found dead inside with Catherine, who was unconscious. She had apparently overdosed on pills in an attempt to take her own life. Investigators even gathered evidence of what had happened to him, how he had died. It was clear that Catherine had attacked him with a butcher's knife, and he woke up desperately trying to turn on the light. He tried to escape and he even managed to open the front door, but he was either dragged back inside or he collapsed on the way. And there in the hallway, he bled to death. This insane woman's attack didn't end there. At some point after the murder, she had withdrawn 1,000 rupees from an ATM. And a postmortem revealed that he had been stabbed at least 37 times, both front and back. It's literally brutal. And most of the wounds had struck his vital organs. Now let me describe what exactly the police had found inside his house. His body was skinned, okay? It means that Katherine Knight had skinned him in one piece, by the way. His whole skin was peeled off in one piece, and it was hung on a meat hook in the archway leading into the lounge. She had chopped his head off, and the head was found in a pot of boiling water, which was still warm when the police came there, which meant that she had been boiling it in the early hours of morning. And right next to it were vegetables. Her actions got more and more disturbing. She had cooked family dinner using John's cooked flesh. She used portions of it, and on the plates she had written a card. Like, there was a card on which she wrote his children's name. It means that she had been intending to serve his meat, his flesh, to his own children. The third meal was found back in the backyard, which meant that she'd been trying to eat it, but she couldn't go through with it. After all the nonsense, after all the stunts that she pulled, she tried to commit suicide right next to his body. There was a blood-stained photograph of John, and she had written a note on it saying that he committed vile acts against her and her children and his own children, which was completely baseless, okay? It was false accusations. She was just trying to play victim card over here. After John Price's murder, Catherine tried to get off the hook or tried to get lighter punishment by pleading guilty to manslaughter. The court didn't listen to her, and on March 2, 2001, she was charged with murder. Her trial was supposed to begin in July 2001, but her lawyer was sick, so it was scheduled to October 15. When the trial finally started, the potential jurors, the candidates, were given a chance to step back because they were warned that the pictures that they were going to see of the crime scene were too graphic. Out of 60 jury candidates, 5 of them immediately left after hearing the warning, and soon more left once they heard the witness list. Eventually, a jury was selected, but right after that, Catherine's lawyers spoke to the judge privately. The next morning, Catherine suddenly changed her plea to guilty. The jury that had been selected was already dismissed before he or she even got the chance to hear the case. It was later revealed that the judge had been told that Catherine was going to change her statement later, and he even arranged a psychiatric evaluation to make sure that she knew what she was doing. Her legal team planned to defend her by saying that she had amnesia so that they could make up an excuse that she couldn't remember when she did the murder or that she didn't intend to murder her husband or her boyfriend. Many psychiatrists supported that idea that she had amnesia, but they still argued that she was sane, which meant that she knew exactly what she'd been doing. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, and up till now, no one knows why Catherine had changed her plea to guilty out of nowhere. Even though she had admitted guilt, she still refused responsibility. She still acted like she hadn't done what she did. During the sentence hearing, her lawyers requested if she could not hear the details, like someone should not mention the details in front of her, but the court refused. When one witness described what she had done to her boyfriend, she went hysterical. She started acting insane, and she had to be immediately sedated. On November 8, 2001, the judge gave his final ruling, and thankfully she was given life in prison without parole. He claimed that her crime was so cruel and she wasn't even remorseful. The least she could be was be remorseful. The least she could do was be remorseful, but she wasn't. Honestly, I think she deserved the death penalty. He even ordered her files to be stamped with "never to be released." It was the first time in Australia that a woman had received such a harsh punishment. But Catherine wasn't done. In 2006, she applied for an appeal, claiming that life in prison without parole was too harsh. But thankfully, the Court of Criminal Appeal threw that out. After her sentencing, Katherine Knight was sent to Silverwater Women's Correctional Center, and somehow over there she got the leadership role. I literally have no idea how. She did not deserve it, but whatever. Somehow other inmates actually looked up to her, and reports showed that by 2017 she hadn't even committed a single violent crime, not even a tantrum behind bars, which is honestly surprising because I don't know how she did that. Katherine Knight's case is still one of the most disturbing cases in Australia's history. She was insane, she was unstable. I don't understand why any of her partners stayed with her. I don't know how her children are. I don't even know what they must be feeling about her. Today, she still sits in prison, never to be released, thank God. But outside those walls, her case is still one of the most horrifying and brutal cases in Australia's history.